All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by our good friends at PrizePicks and Omaha Steaks. And today, powered by a very special guest, a reoccurring guest now on the show, Daniel Oyefusi from ESPN, covers the Cleveland Browns for ESPN.com. Daniel came on the pod earlier this winter, talking about Mike Vrabel coming from Cleveland to the Patriots, and now Vrabel has his second homecoming in as many weeks. So I wanted to have Daniel on to give us the insight on what's going on in Cleveland and also sort of preview this game a little bit. So, Daniel, want to start with this and just get the general overall vibes on what it's been like covering this Cleveland Browns team, not just this year specifically, but overall, just what's it like out in Cleveland right now, and what's it looking like coming into this game?
Yeah, I'll say first off, it's always good to talk with you guys. Appreciate you having me on. I would say this week, I would describe the vibe as subdued, especially coming off a much needed win. There was a lot of angst within Cleveland with the state of the team, them. Being on a 3-game losing streak, the offense struggling like it has, and to get a dominant 31-6 win over the Dolphins, I think that took a lot of pressure off of everybody, especially head coach Kevin Stefanski. I think long term, the old big picture macro, there's still a lot of frustration with the state of the team being at 2-5, and I think that like most people expected them to have this type of record, but it's kind of the manner in which they've gotten at 2-5 has really been frustrating, with the defense being so good and the offense just not being able to do much of anything recently. But right now, everything's kind of, everyone was kind of on edge last week. They got a big win, a much needed win, and everyone's kind of relaxed for now. But you got this game and then the bye week, so the hope for Browns fans like, hey, maybe they can go into the bye week on a little bit of a hot streak, and with a 2-game winning streak.
And real quick, for anybody who didn't catch the games, holding the Dolphins to 6 points with that defense, that makes sense. But what happened with the 30-point explosion? What exactly went right for the Browns, and what do you feel like they might try to build on this week?
Well, that's the thing. They scored 31 points. They broke a franchise record streak of games without eclipsing 17 points. They hadn't scored more than 17 points in 11 straight games, dating back to December of last year. So this was like offensive ineptitude, the very word. I would say for them, they got a lot. They won the turnover battle. They got a lot of, I want to say, turnover luck, but they got turnovers that they really haven't gotten earlier in the season. They had 4 entering last week's game. They had 4 in that game, including 3 interceptions from Tua, which they were able to turn into some short fields and convert. When you look at the actual offensive performance as a whole, it really wasn't that great. They had that long Quinshon Judkins run in the second quarter, but outside of that, they averaged 3.2 yards per carry. The success rate on the Zion rushes was actually a season low. It was 20.7% success rate. So obviously, like, the numbers are a little bit skewed when you get out to a big lead. And Joel Bitonio, the left guard, even said it today. Like for like the second half of that game, they were kind of playing like 4-minute-ish offense, where it's rainy conditions, windy conditions. They're just trying to like get in and get out, having a big lead. But they did talk about like sustainability, like what can carry over from one game to the next. I think that the defensive performance can definitely carry over, with being good on third down, showing some exotic looks to confuse the quarterback. On offense, they have to run the ball way, way better than they did last game, because that's really the foundation of this offense. And then if they run the ball well, maybe they can get into, some play action and push the ball downfield, which we haven't seen them do all season. And it's going to be tough against this Patriots defense, especially on the ground. But it has to start with, being more efficient in the run game.
You mentioned that offense. You also mentioned the defense a little bit earlier on. I want to get into that specifically. I do want to talk about the Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders dynamic there in a little while too. But before we get into your quarterbacks, just want to get an overarching sort of thoughts from the outside looking in on Drake Maye this season. Because, being in the New England ecosphere, like, me and Taylor come on here and just chant MVP every episode. Like he's been awesome. We've also covered him a lot closer than kind of the outside, and I know he's starting to get some MVP conversation and some love. But what have you seen? What does it look like again from the outside looking in at this kid's performance so far this year?
So it's really funny because my guy Dan, who really set up us, getting connected the first time. He's been talking about Drake Maye for over a year now, and I've been like, let's pump the brakes. But the first time that I really got to see Drake Maye up close was that Sunday night game in Buffalo a couple weeks back. And I was really impressed. Just fighting through the kind of the adversity, the back and forth of that game. A lot of the off schedule stuff that he was able to do, like just that really impressed me. The way I kind of view quarterbacks has changed, over the years. You want a guy who can play within the structure of the offense, but also know that like things aren't always going to be perfect. Sometimes you need him to go outside of the play and make some stuff happen. So that really impressed me. And then you look at like the deeper numbers, like he's, top QBR against man coverage, leading the NFL in completion percentage. Like they're really doing some great stuff. And it's really cool to see, what he's doing with Josh McDaniels back as the OC. My guy Ashton Grant, who was with the Browns staff now in New England. It's really cool to see that progression. And you really are seeing like, we talk about that sophomore slump, but it's like, he keeps on ascending. So that's really cool to see. It's going to be a nice little matchup on Sunday for sure.
And is there anything that you expect the Browns to do differently? Like you said, Drake he's been pretty good against everything. Honestly, it's not even fun to look at the splits because it's just like, oh yeah, no, he's been fantastic.
But too.
Right, but man coverage specifically, like you said, he has been very good. As great as his Cleveland pass rush is, if everybody's backs are turned to Drake Maye, there's going to be a couple gaps open. So do you see any ways that they'll maybe change their approach? I know they played a little more zone last week, a little more like creeper pressures and different kinds of blitzing and things like that. What do you expect the Browns to do to try to finally put a stop to what Drake Maye is doing to the NFL?
Yeah, well, the thing about last week's matchup was that, like you said, they completely went away from their identity. Like, this is a man coverage defense. They play a lot of cover one, a lot of cover three. They'll bring a robber down. But they respected the speed of the Dolphins so much and, kind of the precision of that offense with Tua that they said, okay, we're going to play a bunch of zone. So, you can't beat us with your speed and man, but we're going to throw these sim pressures. So now when you look at, this matchup with Drake Maye and me mentioning how good he is against man coverage, I wonder, like, are they going to switch it up? I don't expect that, to be honest. Myles Garrett has said in the past that, like, Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, is stubborn. He's almost stubborn to a fault. Like, he's going to line these guys up on the outside. He's going to put them on islands. He's going to rush with four, and he's going to trust his guys to win. And I'd expect that. I'd expect the Browns to kind of get some more of their identity and their bread and butter. And obviously, they might do some stuff to keep an eye on Drake Maye's dual threat ability. A lot of guys mentioned that, he can and he will take off if things aren't opening up downfield. So yeah, maybe they put like a little spy, or they drop a robber that can have eyes on those crossing routes and also have eyes on the quarterback as well.
And if there's any linebacker duo that's going to be able to spy Drake, it's going to be Devin Bush and Carson Schwezinger. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he was one of my favorite prospects. I still can't say that man's name, but he's a really good player.
He's a baller. He's a baller.
100%. He's great, but that rookie class as a whole has been awesome. Get to them in a little while, but you mentioned Myles Garrett there. Drake Maye spoke yesterday, talked about how Myles Garrett is, straight up one of the best players in the NFL, equally as good against the rush, against the pass, or against the pass, against the run. He is a game wrecker. He's absolutely dominant. But who else on this Cleveland defensive line and in that front seven should we, Patriots fans, people listening to the show, know about who has also contributed to such a staunch and stout Cleveland defense?
Yeah, well, I think you got to look at the interior of the defensive line, and I'll take you back to the offseason where the Browns kind of reshaped the defensive front because they really wanted to, knowing that Myles Garrett gets so much attention, so many chip blocks, so many double teams, sometimes triple teams, they wanted to get guys who were going to be able to take advantage of those one-on-one opportunities when the offensive line kind of shifted and slid to his side. So they went out and they signed Malik Collins in free agency. We obviously know that they trade back from 2 to 5. They get Mason Graham as guys who they think are really like just great fits for this penetrating defense in the run, and then been able to win their one-on-one matchups. And really, they've been proven right so far because Collins and Graham are top 10 in pass rush win rate as an interior. Yeah, it's a tongue twister. From the interior of the defensive line, they're top 10 right now. They're getting a lot of pressure. They're winning their one-on-one matchups. So they know that like Myles Garrett is going to get his every once in a while, but they know that a lot of times he's going to be game planned for, and he might be taken out of the equation. But if so, they got confidence that those two guys can win their matchups or run a lot of stunts and gains and stuff like that. And sometimes they're just like, hey, like just go one-on-one and win that matchup. And more times than not, they're right.
You mentioned the trade back. Sorry, just quickly. You mentioned the trade back from 2 to 5, and it piqued my interest. Do you think they should have stuck and took Travis Hunter, or do you think they're comfortable with Mason Graham and the haul they got in that one?
Oh no, they're very comfortable with what
you think they did the right? Okay.
I mean, they got Quinshon Judkins, who was essentially the fulcrum, the centerpiece of their offense. I believe they got Dylan Sampson as well with that trade back. And then obviously they got an extra first-round pick, which they're definitely going to need to continue to build the foundation of this offense. So Travis Hunter is great. He's a unicorn, as everyone has said. Obviously, we've seen kind of like the struggles and the issues that Jacksonville's had kind of getting him, to make an impact on both sides of the ball. But, like, the Browns got, 2 impact guys right now on both sides of the ball. They got a running back, they got a defensive lineman, and now they got an extra first-round pick that they can work with going forward.
It's so funny looking at the pass rush numbers for the Browns, because if you look at pressure, they're middle of the pack, right? They got a lot of sacks, not a lot of hits.
Because guys are getting the ball out, because teams are getting the ball out so quickly.
Exactly, because the pass rush win rate is elite. I think they're like top 5 or top 3 or something like that.
They might be number 1 right now.
It's like, so clearly teams are very afraid of this pass rush. And obviously, when a team has a great pass rush, you'd love to be able to run the ball all game, right? Run at them, tire them out, drain the clock, all those things. The problem is Browns stuff a whole lot of runs. Patriots run game did take a step last week in Tennessee, but then by the second half, once Tennessee made some adjustments without Jeffrey Simmons, they started running into walls. So is there anything the Patriots can do and that other teams have done to have some success on the ground? And who do they need to avoid, obviously, other than Myles Garrett? I think common knowledge is, just get away from that man as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, well, I think that the teams that have had success, and I think in recent weeks, like we've seen like the Lions ran the ball very well against them. The Vikings had some success, and they schemed it where they attacked the edges and they used a lot of misdirection. So you'd have jet sweeps, pitches, tosses, stuff like that, to really take advantage of that aggressiveness. And sometimes teams kind of attack Myles Garrett's side, knowing that he is so aggressive, and maybe you can get him out of place. He's known to jump off sides sometimes. He can be a little overzealous, over aggressive, which he said is like the cost of doing business when you've got a guy like him who was going to win those matchups. So what interested me when I was just kind of looking at some stats is like the Patriots, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't use like a ton of motion at the snap. It doesn't seem like. But a lot of teams will, use that motion to get guys out of alignment and then, maybe have a run going the opposite direction or in that direction. But usually when teams have been able to run the ball, it's been them, attacking the edges, misdirection, taking advantage of that aggressiveness of that defense.
I will say one thing before you go, Mike. With Josh McDaniels, his thing is the motion rates are usually very low for him. He's very deliberate, though. Yeah. Like if there's a team where he thinks he can mess with their eyes, that's where you see him really lean into it. So this might be one of those weeks because they have shown a lot of respect for this Browns defense. McDaniels today, we spoke to him. He said this is one of the toughest. This is the toughest defense we've faced. It's going to be a crazy big challenge, and they know Myles Garrett is scary, as well as other guys like even Alex Wright. When I'm looking at the tape, I'm like, it's not just Malik Collins who's breaking out. Or Myles Garrett. Exactly.
They're gonna rotate like 8 guys on the defensive line. I'm not joking. Like every guy that's active on the defensive line, they're gonna rotate them in for at least a couple snaps.
That's nasty. Got one more on the Patriots offense here before we flip it to the other side of the ball. Stephon Diggs has obviously had a little bit of a resurgence here. Kayshon Boutte has turned into quite a solid wide receiver number 2. Similar question to what what I kind of asked about Drake Maye, but what has your impression been of the Patriots wide receiver core alongside Drake Maye? And then kind of in turn with this Browns secondary, they added Tyson Campbell earlier this year. How do you think they match up against this Patriots wide receiver core? Do you think they have the advantage, or I guess, how do you see that playing out this weekend?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the Patriots wide receiver core, and like Stephon Diggs, like he just hit the fountain of youth past couple weeks, it feels like, especially start 100%. With that Buffalo game. Something happened with that Buffalo game. But yeah, I mean, he still got it, man. And a lot of people were worried about how he'd be coming off that knee injury. But he still got it. I mean, he's never been like a burner. I think that's part of the reason why he dropped a little bit in the draft. He wasn't a burner, and he had some injuries, or what I believe. But he still has a knack for running routes. I love like the spatial awareness. Like he just knows how to get away from guys. Like, and we saw that where like he gets like a 5-yard pass against the Bills, and then he just kind of stop, get extra 5 yards. He just has that. Shout out my guy Matt Collins. Covered him with the Dolphins. I mean, he just always he's like, I don't want to say he's like the most underrated wide receiver, but he just he comes out of nowhere and he makes big plays. And it's like guys don't remember that he led the NCAA in yards per catch back in North Carolina. He's a baller. He can play. He was kind of cast as a special teams specialist or whatever, but he can't really play. So obviously, when you got an experienced OC like Josh McDaniels, he's just gonna know how to put guys in certain roles and taking advantage of their skill sets. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to win against tight man coverage because you got Denzel Ward on one side, who's one of the best in the game, and you've got Tyson Campbell on the other side, who, I think that, prior to the trade to the Browns, he was struggling a bit with that system in Jacksonville, and the thought process from the Browns was, okay, they're running a more zone-based scheme, but they really like the way that he fit in their man-based scheme. He has long arms, he's tall, he's physical, he can run. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw it, but he hawked down Devon Achane in the last game when it seemed like he was gone for a touchdown. He was a track standout himself in high school in the 100 and 200. So he's really coming along. Obviously, he had a pick six in that game last Sunday. So he's getting more comfortable with this scheme. It's always hard when you switch teams, switch schemes. But they're throwing him right into the fire. And he's been pretty good so far.
I did see on the tape he's allowed some vertical targets. If teams are going to go deep, it's typically against him. So where is the push and pull there exactly? Yeah,
I mean, he did get beat in that first game. His first game with the Browns against the Steelers. He was lined up against DK a lot. And, the Browns don't switch sides with their cornerback. So Denzel Ward will be on the left side of the defense. Tyson Campbell will be on the right side. And, obviously the Steelers were aware of that. They took advantage of it. They lined DK up a lot against them. And, he had his wins against DK, but he also, gave up a touchdown on a double move. So it's just that, just kind of getting comfortable in this scheme. And, Jim Schwartz talked about, kind of teaching him to play the ball in the air and to look back so he can track the ball. He talks about how some teams, they just play the ball through the receiver's hands and they react to that. But he's like, no, we want to get eyes on the ball and react accordingly. So, there is a bit of an adjustment. And, he has been beaten a little bit, when he was in Jacksonville as well. So, definitely susceptible to getting beat, but they do like the way he's been playing in this scheme so far.
All right, we will get into how the Patriots defense matches up against this Browns offense in just a second. But first, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks, because as you all know, if you are listeners to the show, this episode and every episode of Patriots Daily is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. So don't miss out on any of the excitement this football season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player on up to three times in the same lineup. So, for example, Thursday Night Football tonight, if you want to pick Carson Wentz, Vikings quarterback, to have more or less passing yards, more or less rushing yards, more or less touchdowns, whatever you want, you can put all three picks in the same lineup only on PrizePicks. PrizePicks also offers MasterCard, Apple Pay, and Venmo to cash in and cash out, making it super easy to get in on the action. So join millions of members and sign up today for America's #1 fantasy sports app. All you got to do is download the PrizePicks app and use code CLNS, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Shout out PrizePicks, as always, for sponsoring this show and every episode of Patriots Daily. All right, let's continue on here. Talking Patriots versus Browns coming up on Sunday in Foxborough. Flip it over to the Browns offense here, which is not the strength of this team, to say the least. Daniel just mentioned earlier. Scored more than 17 points for the first time in over 11 games this past weekend. Leaning on rookie quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Also leaning on rookie running back Quinshon Judkins. So just kind of those two guys and how and why they've had to lean so much on this rookie class. In general, this can kind of loop in the defense as well. We talked about Schwechender earlier. Judkins has been great. Gabriel's been okay. How has the whole class fared, and what's made them such a good and competitive rookie class so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're judging them through through 7 games so far, I think you got to give this class, an A minus. And I think the only thing that's keeping it from being an A is like the 2 quarterbacks who, they're still looking to see if one of them can pop. If any one of those 2 quarterbacks pops and is like a serviceable, legit starting quarterback, this is a home run smash hit of a draft. But really, like, the thought process entering this season for the Browns was, coming off a 3-14 season, still kind of feeling the effects of the Deshaun Watson trade. And as much as like the financial aspect has really been, harped on, I personally think that like the biggest impact of it was the lack of draft capital that they gave up in that trade, and not being able to get young guys on rookie contracts and young contributors on rookie contracts. So, they had the use 7 picks in this draft, and the thought process was like, hey, like well, Andrew Berry, the GM, described it as a strategic pivot, which I think was a very smart way of saying like a little bit of a reset, a little bit of a rebound. So they knew that they were going to play a lot of young guys, and outside of like just drafting really good players, like they drafted really good fits and guys who have been placed into very defined roles right now. So obviously you have Quinshon Judkins, who's the bell cow. They've really thrown him right in there, even though he missed all of training camp with a legal situation. And then Dylan Sampson is kind of like the change of pace, passing down back, who can run some routes. Obviously we talked about Schlesinger, Mason Graham. You got Harold Fannin, tight end, who they call the queen on the chessboard. They put him everywhere. I mean, I think he's taking a snap. He's taking a snap out wide, tight end, detached, in the slot, in the backfield, and he's taking a wildcat snap. So they just put him everywhere, and he's a playmaker. He's just a playmaker.
God, I loved it.
So they're really just getting like really strong contributions from this rookie class. They were going to play these young guys. They were going to go young. They were going to pivot a little bit, and they're being rewarded for that, even though it hasn't shown up in the wins just yet.
Carson and Harold doing well, man. That gives me goosebumps. Those were 2 of my draft crushes, so that's fantastic. I am curious about Dillon Gabriel, though, because the numbers say he hasn't been super productive or efficient, but he is protecting the football. I'm curious. Numbers can say one thing, tape can say another. So what really has been the story of Dillon Gabriel since he's been able to take over the starting quarterback spot? And is there anything that the Patriots really should be worried about that maybe we're sleeping on?
So it's a tough evaluation for Dillon Gabriel right now because they benched Flacco in part because he just turned the ball over like way too much. Like he had 8 turnovers in 4 games, and they weren't all his fault. But the passing game was struggling, and you're turning the ball over. So it's like those are 2 no-goes. Ball security is like the utmost priority. So like for Dillon, he hasn't turned the ball over, but he's had 2 drop picks. In his 3 starts, he has put the ball in harm's way at times, and it hasn't been, penalized for it just yet. The problem is that like the change in quarterback hasn't resulted in any change in the passing game. He's last in yards per attempt, air yards, and yards per dropback. But the thing is, like, there's so much going around him that's dysfunctional that it's hard to like really grade him. Obviously, we look at the quarterback and their stats and we say they're not performing well, but it's tough. You look at their tackle situation, and I say it might be one of the worst if not the worst in the NFL. They've used 5 different players at the tackle position.
Wow.
And it's really like a bottom 5, bottom 10 pass blocking group. They've shuffled guys in and out at right tackle, left tackle. They're hoping to get Jack Conklin back at right tackle, but it's just tough like to drop back and really push the ball downfield when you're getting beat so quickly. And then you have the wide receivers who, they rank second, or the entire passing group ranks second in the NFL in drops. Jerry Jeudy is supposed to be their number 1 wide receiver, and he struggled a lot as well. I think that as I watch the film, I do see Dillon Gabriel missing some opportunities downfield. I do see sometimes where his eyes might be in the wrong place, or he's not waiting for plays to develop, and he's just checking the ball down. And he says that, you don't go broke taking a profit, but it's like, okay, yeah, but you're not getting much of a profit from those checks. So, it's a tough evaluation when so much around him isn't really coming into place. But I do see, a rookie quarterback who, isn't always seeing the field as well as you'd like him to, and he is missing some throws as well.
Bad tackle situation and no wide receivers making a quarterback evaluation difficult. Patriots fans don't know anything about that for the past few years. No idea.
But before we kind of wrap and get into like a maybe game prediction style to end this thing off, I do want to get in an inside Cleveland Browns beat perspective on the rookie quarterback situation, because obviously the Shedeur Sanders thing was it has been made into a circus by sort of the outside national media. People want Shedeur to play. People don't think he's like. There's a lot around it, and so from your perspective, being around the team every day, what you've seen, I guess, from the limited practice, we sort of get in season and the development over the summer. Like, in your opinion, was it the right pick? Was the wrong pick? Is there just too much smoke around it for this kid to have a chance? Like, kind of, I'm curious what it's been like for the Shedeur Sanders roller coaster from your perspective.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, and I've said it multiple times over the past couple of months, especially with the way that the training camp played out, with having like 5 different quarterbacks, 4 quarterbacks at one point, Shedeur not getting any first-team reps. I don't think that the composition of the quarterback room was the best, and I say that to, like, you had, like, I asked the GM specifically, like, when you draft two quarterbacks, what's the point of having Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett in the room? And he's like, yeah, well, sometimes there's like some tension between like future versus present, but we don't view it as that. And then lo and behold, 5 games into the season, Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco aren't there. But I also say, like, especially when you're bringing Kenny Pickett, who you thought could be like kind of resurgent player, you could kind of make him into the next Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. When you went that route and then you took Dillon Gabriel, I didn't see where there was enough space for Shedeur Sanders. I thought that it should have been one rookie quarterback, and then you have a somewhat young quarterback that you're trying to, rebuild in Kenny Pickett. So I think that the whole construction of the quarterback room was really wonky. And then you obviously get into, how they kind of handled Shedeur Sanders. And, at this point, you can't change anybody's opinion. I just tell you what, I'm hearing from the team. And the thought process was that they didn't believe that he was as NFL ready and as polished as maybe like the layman did, like the fans did. Everyone was saying, is he going to go 2? Is he going to go first round? Is he going to go day 1? Like, the Browns didn't view him as like a smash hit day 1 prospect, because if they did, they probably would have taken him at 2. They would have taken him a lot earlier than they did. And there's a reason why they took Dillon Gabriel. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that in evaluating Dillon Gabriel, they did view him as a player, as a quarterback who was ready to play sooner than later, and they thought that the experience that he got at Oregon was going to transfer over to what they were asking him to do in Cleveland. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that was their thinking. So then you have this situation where everyone's like, why isn't Shedeur Sanders getting reps? And they're sabotaging him. And the fact of the matter is, like, regardless of what you thought, we have to take away the pre-draft notion and opinion and thought process. The fact of the matter is, now he's a 5th round quarterback, and he was the 2nd quarterback taken, in that draft for the Browns. So the fact is, he isn't going to be maybe prioritized the way that another quarterback would. Like, it's not always fair. Totally. And again, I've been trying to kind of like tell people in real time that, like, it wasn't quote unquote an open competition. They just said that everyone's expected to compete, but they went into training camp. Exactly, but they went into training camp.
Different way of words. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But they went into training camp understanding that they had 2 veteran quarterbacks who were just naturally going to be ahead of the rookies, and then they had a 3rd round quarterback who they thought was ahead of the 5th round quarterback. And I know people don't like to hear it, they don't believe it, but they believe that they need to develop him further before he's ready to play. So that's what they've been doing. He's not getting first team reps right now like Dillon did as the backup, and he wasn't getting first team reps, but that's the way that they decided to handle his development. For better or for worse, whether it's right or wrong, I'm not saying it is. That's just the way that they've handled it. He's going to get his chance to play, and make all that a moot point. But they did believe that Dillon was ready and more pro ready than Shedeur, which is why we're seeing what we're seeing right now.
Totally. When it comes to Shedeur, I feel like, unfortunately, he and his family have invited. This is why, like when Mike was saying, oh, it's a lot of the media. I feel like we also have jobs to do. And with who he is, what he did in college, the watch and everything, like, there is going to naturally be attention. And then, like, the pantomiming thing, I remember just being like, dude, like, you're drawing attention to yourself. I understand what you think is happening, but now it has to be covered, and you've got like ESPN on it. Like, even Adam Schefter's tweeting about it. So it became a thing. But none of that matters, because like Baker Mayfield has shown, you can have whatever personality you want as long as you're not committing no crimes or anything. But you can be flashy, you can be a little cocky and whatever people want to say, as long as you're winning and you're producing. My issue with Shedeur when he was coming out was the going backwards in the pocket. Fundamentally, as a guy who didn't have the physical skill set to make up for it when you do things like that, I just thought it was such a glaring issue, because what are you doing to compensate? So I understand.
And we saw that. And we saw that, to your point, we saw that in the final preseason game where obviously, like, I know people will say he was playing with third and fourth string offensive tackles and offensive linemen who aren't on the team. That is correct. But from the Browns perspective and really league-wide, it was like, okay, and like I talked to a quarterbacks coach that said you can't take bad sacks because when you get put behind the 8 ball like that, it is so detrimental to it. It destroys a drive. The quarterback's coach said that you can get away with that in college where the talent disparity is way wider. And if you get into 2nd and 20, you can overcome that. But you're not very often overcoming 2nd and 20 and 3rd and 15 in the NFL. So it's like, yes, the offensive line situation may not always be good, but you can't make a bad play worse. That's what was phrased. You can't make a bad play worse. So the pocket management, understanding the playbook, all that stuff. They think he's talented, which is why they traded up to take him in the 5th round. They were like, this guy's in the 5th round, like that's a better pick than anything else we could get with our last pick in the 5th round. We might as well do that. But they did think that there was a lot of things that they needed to work with him on before they really put him out there.
And that's, I guess, kind of where I was going with that, is just to wrap that up. I know it's tough because we're not actually watching practices anymore at this point. You're going, taking attendance, and leaving. Do you know if he's taken any strides in that direction? Is he making some of the fundamental improvements they were hoping that he would make so that maybe he can potentially push Dillon Gabriel? Or does it seem very much like this year it's going to be Dillon's job unless something were to happen that's unexpected?
Well, to that last point, the owner, Jimmy Haslam, said that it is absolutely important to see both of these rookie quarterbacks play before the 2026 draft when they have 2 first-round picks. So I expect to see Shedeur Sanders at some point. I don't know if it's going to be the last 4 games. I'm not sure. I think it's kind of dependent on how Dillon plays, because if he plays well and they're winning games, there's really no reason to make a change. But if they continue to struggle on offense and lose games, the calls for Shedeur are going to get louder. And I think, internally they're going to say, hey, we might as well put this guy out there and see what he has. But yeah, I mean, I have been told that he has been improving. I mean, even in the summer, like that preseason opener was very, very impressive. That opened a lot of eyes in the organization to say like, okay, well, maybe we need to bring him along a little bit faster. And it sucks that he had the oblique strain a couple of days later, or he had like an oblique strain, like warming up in joint practices with the Eagles.
Right.
And like really, I see that as like a huge missed opportunity, because I was told that he was going to get a lot more reps. They were going to see what he could do with more on his plate. And then he was always obviously going to get to play in the game, but he didn't get that week of practice. He didn't get to play that game. He missed a week. And then when he came back, he only had limited practice time before he struggled in that preseason finale. And that was kind of it. Like, it was like, all right, well, we're not going to see him again for, another couple months. So he has been progressing. But, we're just not going to know until we actually get to see him out there to play in real games.
All right, we'll wrap it up on Patriots versus Browns. We'll bring it back to the game at hand here. Obviously, Shedeur can get into a whole different conversation, but
we could spend 2 hours on Shedeur.
I'm the drama guy on the pod, Daniel. So I could sit here and talk about that shit all day. But we got to bring it back to focus. Patriots, I would say, expected to win this game at home, at least favored according to some bettors. Shout out the NBA. But the expected to win this one on a 4-game win streak here. Cleveland also coming off a big win. Quickly, I guess in your mind, if Cleveland pulls off an upset here, how do they do it? How can they come in and beat the Patriots?
I mean, I think it's a similar formula to the Dolphins game, where, you got to be a little opportunistic. You got to force some turnovers, get you some short fields, because the offense hasn't shown the ability to sustain those drives and create big plays down the field. So, if they do win the turnover battle 2-0, if they do get, a block kick or just a special teams play like they did last game with the forced fumble and recovery, something like that to kind of turn the tide, set you up with a short field. And obviously the defense needs to play to its standard for them to have any chance, because, again, they're probably going to have to carry a lot of the load in this game.
And on the other side of the ball, what does the Patriots offense have to do really to avoid negative plays? I feel like that's the biggest thing. With a guy like Drake Maye, he might make his plays, but like you said, even for a guy like that, if you get behind the 8 ball, you're going to be in some kind of trouble.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because more times than not, the Browns have been able to run the ball. So Obviously it's going to start there for the Patriots. Like, you don't want to put everything on Drake May's shoulders, but it seems like, recently he kind of has been able to put everything on his shoulders.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, outside of that, like in the passing game, it's like, yeah, you got to drop some man beaters. And, that's why, like, that's going to be such an interesting chess match with your two veteran, very respected coordinators in Jim Schwartz on the Browns side and Josh McDaniels on the Patriots side. Like, I know Josh McDaniels he has the man beaters lined up. Like, I know he's got them carved up and ready to go. So there's going to be a little bit of that chess match. Like, hey, okay, on third down, we're showing like we're going to be in man coverage, cover one, and then we maybe rotate into a cover two look, which the Browns are known to do a lot of times. Like, hey, can Drake May
talked about that too?
That?
You mentioned that in the press conference. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so can he diagnose that? I know there was like a great play going viral from the Titans game where the Titans did rotate from that single high look into cover two, and he hit that whole shot. Like, okay, like there might be a couple of those plays where you got to see the post snap rotation and make those plays. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a really interesting chess match on the defensive side of the ball for the Browns going up against that Patriots offense.
It's going to be fun. I like how you mentioned that, the two veteran coaches going against each other in Schwartz and McDaniels. That's definitely an exciting little angle here, as is Mike Vrabel playing against the Cleveland Browns once again, the Kevin Stefanski angle. They, worked together last year a lot. So a lot of storylines woven into this one, and we'll ultimately see what happens on Sunday afternoon. So again, this was Daniel Oyefusi from ESPN helping us preview Patriots versus Browns. Before we get you out of here, Daniel, just let our fans know where they can find you, what you got coming over at ESPN.com, and where they can find you and what's going on with you.
Yeah, obviously you can find all my work at ESPN.com and follow me on social media at Daniel Oyefusi, just like you see below me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And again, Taylor and I will be back on the pod next week. We'll do our weekly Discord chat tomorrow as well at 3 p.m. So keep eyes out for that. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.